can officially say that I finished my line edits for That Age, my book that's coming out before the end of 2020, and I learned quite a bit about my writing, about my grammar, about the words I use too much. So if you're interested in finding out the things I did wrong and the things I learned, grab a glass of wine because you might need it. Welcome to The Right Mama. I am Jennifer Aline. I am a freelance writer, the mother of twin girls, and like I just said, my women's fiction novel, That Age, is coming out through Kindred Ink Press before the end of 2020. I just finished round 2 of my edits for this book. And as I've said before, I'm not a huge fan of editing, especially when it comes to my work. I like to create the world and the characters and the plot and the conflict and all that fun stuff. But editing, it just takes a long time. And after I'm done writing the book, I kind of want to jump to the fun stuff like marketing and cover art and collaborating and merch. But editing, it has to happen. You have no way of getting published if you don't edit. Whether you want to self-publish or go the traditional route, you have to edit. This video is me going over a few points that I learned from these line edits, and hopefully the mistakes I made and the things I've learned can help you out when you get to this point of editing. The first few things we're going to talk about today are some words or phrases that I used way too often in this book. And I'm going to tell you how many times those words or phrases were used and what I did about it. Number one that we're going to talk about when it comes to these words I use too much was the word toward. Not towards, toward. I learned that toward is the word that you should use in America, not towards. Of course, this is subjective in a way. Some editors may be okay with the use of towards, while others, if they're with the Chicago Manual, may not be a huge fan. So I'm going to read what I learned after my editor told me about how often I used the word towards, which was, dun dun dun, 245 times in my book. This is what I looked up after I discovered this. This is on dictionary.com. And it says, both of the words are derived from toward, T-O-E-W-A-R-D, which means in the direction of. According to the Chicago Manual of Style, the preferred form in English American is toward, without the S, while the preferred British English form is towards, with the S. This general rule works with other directional words, including forward, backward, upward, and downward. This was news to me. So if you're out there, you may now not feel as dumb because you're not alone. A lot of people do this, and I was one of those people who did this 245 times. The second one we are going to talk about today is not as much fun as my with toward, but the word look, or the form of look, whether that's looking, looked, or look. I used this 163 times in my novel. Of course, I went back and changed a lot of the look or looks or looking to a different form. I didn't want to go too crazy because sometimes when you go, he glared or he gazed, you don't want to do that too often because sometimes look is all you need. But I did go through and change a lot of those look forms to something else that may fit the scene a little bit better. Third word I'm going to discuss that I used way too often is the form of reach. I guess there's a lot of reaching in my book, and I used reach 144 times. I don't realize how often I'm using these words. So when it came to reach, I made sure I had thesaurus.com on my laptop as a tab. So when I was writing and I came across this word, went into thesaurus, looked up reach, and used something different like grabbed or clawed or something else other than reach if it fits the scene. Of course, sometimes you can use reach, but having thesaurus popped up on your laptop when you're editing or even just writing, probably editing, can be extremely helpful. Third, I'm going to discuss with you is lean, or a form of lean, such as leaning or leaned. I guess there's a lot of leaning that goes on in my book. And I used this word or the form of this word 110 times. Leaning. So I went through, again, popped up the thesaurus, typed in lean, and found a different word or reworded the phrase that had lean in it to make the sentence not have lean and still work for the scene. 5 does not have a word count with it, but it's something I noticed I wrote a lot of when I was editing this time around, and it's the word slouch. There was a lot of slouch or slouching or slouched that was going on for some reason. So I made sure that when I was editing this line edit round, that if I saw the word slouch, I tried to go to the thesaurus and find something that was similar to slouch, maybe slump, maybe that you need the thesaurus because your brain can't always come up with something like that. So that was just a word I realized I wrote a lot of in that age. The next part of this video is going to be me talking about some other things I learned when I was going through this round of edits. Phrases or sentences or sayings that I and the editor found happen quite often, and we wanted to make sure that they didn't happen a bazillion times, that they were worded differently, or maybe the action changes a little bit so it doesn't continue to happen throughout the book. What I'm going to go over is shaking of the head, shaking one's head. He shook his head. That idea of shaking of the head. And this one actually is very, very popular among many writers because it is a show, not tell movement. And of course you want to show and not tell. So instead of saying he said angrily, you may say he shook his head with a furrowed brow. But if you say that over and over and over, it's not as useful when it comes to painting the scene. So this one I totally understood because a lot of people do it, and I felt much better when I realized that a lot of people use this phrase. Number 2 makes me laugh because when I came across this little sidebar comment from my editor, I laughed out loud because it's true. It's extremely true in my book. And what my editor wrote in the sidebar after she highlighted a phrase was this: eyebrows move a lot in this story. She wrote that, and I found it to be hilarious because I do, for some reason, make eyebrows move quite often in my books. And again, it's because I'm trying not to tell how someone feels. I'm trying to show how they feel. But I go to the eyebrows when it comes to showing, not telling. Someone might say a phrase, and instead of me saying he said loudly, or she said, or she whined, or something along those lines, I would make their eyebrows angle down or their eyebrows lift. I did that a lot. There's a lot of eyebrow movement. So after I read her little comment in the sidebar, a lot changed, and I really worked hard to make the eyebrows move less or take them out or make some other action happen. But that was a toughie. It is me realizing that a lot of phrases that have these 2 words in them can be reworded or those phrases be taken out. And those 2 words are however and instead. I realized that a lot of my sentences, not a ton, but many, would either start with however, comma, blah, 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 or instead, comma, blah, blah, blah. I realized that if I took out however or instead, or put them somewhere else in the sentence, it was a better sentence to read, especially however. You really don't need it that much. Like all of a sudden, you really don't need that phrase. Words with however and instead, I sat back, reread the sentence, and tried my best to reword it or take those words out or put them somewhere else that still made sense. Art is similar to number 3 when it comes to phrases that I kind of realized happen often. And a lot of phrases with these 3 words in them happen quite often. And you really don't need many ly words. You don't always need ly words. And I'll kind of do a description down here or over there or somewhere. And 3 ly words that I use often are dearly and slightly. I use slightly all the time. I said that in my last editing video, and I will say it every time. Slightly drives me crazy. I also use clearly quite often. However, I took that out a lot, and if I really needed it, I kept it. Dearly, you can show those words through emotions and actions. You don't usually need those words. And when I did my line edits, I realized this. Very last thing I am going to discuss with you today has to do with a sentence structure that I realized after this editing round use a lot. And I call it the A plus B, comma, C plus D phrase. And using an A plus B, comma, C plus D phrase, it means something happened and something, comma, something and something. There's always two parts to the sentences, and a comma separates them. Here's an example. Rode across the room and slumped into the couch, or slouched into the couch, comma, crossing his arms across his chest and furrowing his brow. There were 4 parts, A plus B, separated by a comma, and then C plus D. I almost forgot my alphabet right there. I did that a lot. Need all of these things. So instead of saying he strode across the room and slumped into the couch, crossing his arms and furrowing his brow, to make it a better flowing sentence, you can say, he strode across the room with a furrowed brow. There you go. Same action, same emotions attached to that sentence. You could also say, he strode across the room and slumped into the couch with a furrowed brow. You don't need this plus this, this plus this. You can shorten the sentence, make it sweeter, make it a little shorter, and make it flow a ton better. If you don't use you have it. Those are a whole bunch of things I learned from these line edits, and I'm gonna grab my wine because I feel like I always am drinking wine when it comes to my editing videos because I love edits so much. I learned this round of edits, and I still have a couple more rounds-ish to go before the book's edits are finished. And I will continue to update you guys on how these edits go, what I learned, and hopefully what I've learned can help you out when it comes to editing your own books, either for yourself or publication. So thank you very much for listening. If you like this kind of stuff, subscribe below, hit the thumbs up button, comment if you relate to any of these things that I talked about today. It'll make me feel a lot better and probably other people feel better too. And be creative, drink your coffee, or if you're editing, drink the wine.